This is topic 6, community and creative identity in a post work from home era, radio as connective tissue. Ale, can you kick us off?
Yes, hi, my name is Alejandro Cohen. I'm the executive director of dublab, which is a nonprofit radio station based here in Los Angeles. We've been broadcasting since 1989.
I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki Swarn. I am the general manager and program director for 104.7 The Drop, the people station for R&B and hip hop. We too are a public media station, the second offering in the hip hop and R&B vibe of public media. So we're super excited.
Yeah, and my name is Jason Kramer. I'm a DJ for the last many years, I could say, at KCRW Radio here in Los Angeles, and also I'm an instructor and professor at various institutions.
Hi there, my name is Adam Lewis. I run the Planetary group. We're based in Los Angeles. We're a marketing firm working with new music, new artists from around the world, doing a lot of college and non-commercial radio promotion. So it's my job to twist arms of radio folks to try to get them to play new music. So none of us stepped up to be moderator. So, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think I remember at the last Amplify Music, some of the conversations I remember we've had, Nikki, Jason, I remember you two were there. It was radio and embracing the embracing the new, but also keeping a foot on the traditional, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember there was that, I don't know if hesitancy, but that question that up in the air is how much do you embrace the new, and how far do you go from radio when it's no longer radio and it's something else, whatever you want to call that, right? And then something. I expressed to Adam in the green room as before starting was that I tend to come from a place where I think it's good to keep an eye on what's new, the new platforms, how to embrace them to connect with people. But I'm also from a place where not letting those things define who you are. Use them to your advantage, but continue being radio. Continue using radio in the traditional form, right? And I think to me, radio is a medium of limitations. And that's the beauty of it. You know, the fact that it's audio only, for example, right? There's a beauty on how you connect with people just through sound, and the magic of radio comes through that. And many times radio also, the beauty of it to me is that it's a one-way communication in the sense of I am the host, I speak, you, the listener, you listen, right? And obviously there could be chat rooms and other ways to communicate, but those are the limitations of the medium that I think to me makes it special too. I don't know what is everyone's experience been lately with that.
Well, go ahead.
I think that radio, especially as we look at this transition that we're coming through in terms of people returning back to some sort of, I don't think that there's ever going to be another normal, quote unquote. It's just going to be a new process, a new way of living. But as we return to some of the things that we've known in the past, like going to work, maybe, dropping children off at school and participating in some typical life activities, radio is one thing that I think has been a little bit consistent during the pandemic and post-pandemic. The relationship that we have with our communities are unique ones. I think we are far more reactive. We are far more proactive. We have a greater landscape in which to explore communities and develop the connective tissue within different types of communities. I think about how quickly we had to move things from a local perspective around Black Lives Matter, recently with the verdict from George Floyd, the trial, and even beyond that, like just giving people information so that they felt like someone was hearing them and could see them. Radio is a really special place in terms of also being that local and live of connection. you're seeing it, it depends on if you come from commercial or if you come from public media. You know, public media, I made a transition. I used to be in commercial media and commercial radio specifically. And the transition into public media was one that I have relished and treasure, because I'm given the time and the space to connect locally. I have the time and the space to not have to be like, okay, how many commercial spots can I get into this hour, so I can make sure that we make our budget. That whole concept and thought kind of goes out the window, because that's not the tent pole or the catalyst for the content that we're creating. It's a byproduct, and if we make some money off that, that's great. But really where the focus is on this local connectivity to the community. I sit and I face the beautiful 21st and Arapahoe here in Denver, and I can see people out there walking around. They actually come to the parking lot that's just below our window and wave at us each day. So for me, I say, okay, the things that I'm talking about, the connective tissue is based on live and local, and the story is being retold. Matter of fact, there's a congruent conference that's taking place right now. And right now in their discussion, they're talking about live and local radio.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was proven with the pandemic, because I mean, radio numbers were up especially in the early days of the pandemic, you know, because people wanted that connection to news and local and what was happening. You know, I think that the world of non-commercial radio is really vibrant, and there's a great connection there, and there's a great community, and there's wonderful curation from the hosts, whether it's news or music, right? I think commercial radio is really going to be challenged in that sense, because they've dug themselves such a hole financially that they can't get out of. And, you know, I don't know anyone under the age of 30 that wants to listen to a top 40 radio station, right? So I think it's really, you know, people aren't going to wait around to listen to, you know, the hit song that they're waiting for when they can get it on demand. So you need to have something more than that. You need to have something, you have to have community. And that's what's so wonderful about non-commercial stations, low power FMs, all of that, because they're really, you know, they're hyper local. There's a great connection, you know, and I think all the other things that these stations are also able to do, you know, whether it's a song of the day feature, you know, on their website, or, you know, KEXP hosting bands on their YouTube channel. I mean, I don't have a band from anywhere in the world that doesn't ask me, can you get me on KEXP's YouTube channel? And that's an amazing testament, right? I've literally artists from Iceland, Estonia, Australia, New Zealand will all ask me about that, because now radio's reach is worldwide if you're doing it right. You know, and KCRW does it great, KXP does it great, The Current in Minnesota. You know, there's some wonderful stations out there that really understand curation, and I think that's the future, right? Whether it's news, community, or music, that's where radio is going to be able to connect and find its niche, you know, moving forward. It's always been that, but it's just evolved. It's just a different thing now.
Well, there's another thing with radio too, because we've had the element of live shows that have just kind of dissipated over the last year or so, and radio has always generally been the theater of the mind, the theatrics, kind of keeping the brain rolling, so, you know, you can use your imagination. And I think that's right what Nikki was saying, that if you have a local identity within radio, it's going to be a lot stronger. You know, and funny enough, in Los Angeles, our top radio stations are actually old. It would be stuff from the 80s, 90s. Those are familiarity songs, right? Stuff you could put in the background. We've just had a thirst, in a way, from just watching TikTok or just watching Instagram. We kind of want people to maybe program it. You know, when you have the DSPs like the Spotifys and Apples, you get, the top favorite songs that the labels set up for them, right? But the thing with radio is you get a human element of picking music or what people want to hear. And I think that's something that we have to keep consistent. Radio is still one of the most listened to things out there. You would think that kids would be listening to, like, I guess the population would be a higher, you know, as you said, a higher population at 30 plus, probably is listening to radio more than the kids do, but still, you're still at a teetering of more than 50% are still listening to radio.
Yeah. I mean, I see radio.
It's live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see. It's interesting, Jason. You were mentioning the theater of the mind, which is sort of like going to that idea of limitations, right? And then also, Adam, you were talking about KEXP with the YouTube videos, and Nikki, you were talking about the idea of building community or being part of our routines radio, right? And to me, all these things are connected to one thing radio offers, which is radio in a way is kind of the steady wheel, right? That may not have the million peaks, of TikTok and millions of years, but it's this thing that always runs in the background. And you may go to social media, and you may go to the latest trend, but radio is always in the back. Yeah. And if and you haven't tuned in a week, and you go, you'll be like, okay, the world is ending. What's happening here? Support, in the background. And as much as KEXP may have this, that without radio, right? And without being community, that's what I see radio.
And it's always there. Right? It's free and it's everywhere, mm-hmm. right? And
right.
And you're also listening in different ways, right? So people are listening on 6A to 10A and whenever it works for them as their lives have changed. But
so, yeah, on demand, you're able to taking place in a community. And I think one of the podcasting and I think how do you define the difference in learn from each other?
Are essentially Sunday night programming on radio. For years, programming on radio on Sundays has always been a talk format or a specialty type show. Talk radio is essentially podcasting. Podcasting today seems to be a little more without a filter, whereas radio kind of had that filter and developed shows for you. In my time, I worked 2 years on Fox Sports Radio as a producer. And there's a lot that goes into it. When you have 2 million people that have to listen to this, this stuff, you have live stringers, you have this, you have live interviews, you have 2-3 things going on at the same time. You got news. Podcast is pretty much a college level of talk radio, or high school level, really. But the importance of podcasting, I think, is something that we should embrace more. It's not a new thing. It's been going on for at least 20 years. Radio stations should embrace it even stronger to bring in a younger audience, a different audience. But yeah.
I think also with podcasting, it's a way to embrace a different audience. Like you were talking about that, Jason, and you can speak highly because you can really get down to some minutia in specific podcasts. Like you can go a little bit off genre that maybe expands your overall target demographic or format for your radio station. You could find somebody who's like me, who plays hip hop and that through the medium of a podcast, using that as a connection to different in its entirety based on. You might listen to me with things make me tick. So it's radio. I think it's one of those communities into us, because I look for that all the time. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to and it's kind of a podcast. The DOC is approved, and an individual, I don't like the word incarcerated, so having learned a skill, so we can try to assess this using that via a podcast. And is you get a chance to have more people have this hold from community perspectives, even if they're imagined. It's based on a community forward, and I want to have a discussion of it. Get that chance to say, we have our, we're encouraging our air talent about something that's not their typical, maybe day part. My forefront, podcasts aren't going. I just think that the science behind them is getting better, and it's getting easier. Be on the radio, but you really don't have that opportunity through a podcast without playing music. But
to me, there's two things. Again, as that idea of like go and stand, just like you said, Nikki, use it for these ways. It offers great opportunities to offer another way to access your to your radio. But I always take it as I'm in the business of radio, so podcasts sources, but I won't let that define us. That resonates. What you just said, Nikki, is the idea of like, if you don't have the, and to me that is very important to remember, because also radio, and it's the access to anything, but radio really is the art of repetition and how you can do it over and over and do it for 1 week. Is, can you do this for years? Really, that is what makes radio to me, is the companionship, that steady wheel.
for you guys, actually.
Trust, right? You're building trust, right? And that's where, you know, and when we're credible DJs to curate, to play some band I've never heard of from some faraway land. That's why people tune into the different shows. You know, KCRW doesn't really even have much of a format. Neither does KEXP. Their show, and that's what's so. You know, I would encourage, you know, bad rap now because like everyone, blah blah blah, and those are all wonderful things. And so I would encourage artists and bands to still, you know, think about.
Be on TikTok, you could be on Instagram, you could be still in this industry, loves the fact that they're on the thing they do, gathering around, walking. Great, but guess what? It's not the same. And staring at it and hearing you come out of that. There's something poetic about that. And I don't think that's really going to ever change. I truly
and I
don't.
agree with that 100%. It's a validation that only radio can provide.
Only thing that could provide, and that is absolutely radio.
And that's what it is. It doesn't matter what else is going on, what other mediums are. It still comes back to the center of radio. When artists are in town, they still want to stop here. They still want to be, oh, how can I talk? We had that. We had an artist pop up. Spice One came to town, popped up on us, and had the best time, and told us, like, this is why I love to visit radio stations, because I might not get to talk to everybody at my concert. I can see them all in this out there, but when I come to radio, somebody can call me and tell me, like, thank you so much for creating the music you created, and I can connect with them. So radio will remain in that special space in its ether, and it just evolves and continues to grow as generations continue to change and help amplify what it does. My question for you all.
Does Spice One have a song you can play on the air that's clean?
We actually, you know what, that was like the number one thing. Like, when we started this station, this format, we had no music. We had to acquire our entire library ourselves, and trust and believe, it's been like the biggest exercise. We still are doing it to this day. And there's songs that, you know, he came in with an edit for us, which is great. And we're really excited about that. One of the questions I have for all of you, because we are currently established in our career spaces, right? Like, we worked really hard to get to where we are in terms of the maturity, in terms of what we do, but those future generations of broadcasters, I'm always concerned about that, because we saw a nullification of, like, the night jock. Like, you know, that used to be, oh, if I could just get on nights, if I could just come in and do nights, I'm a, you know, matriculate my way through this radio station and end up with my own show. Like, you saw a change in the paradigm of how radio stations put together. I think it's really important that we talk about how we groom for the future. Who are our next GMs? Who are our next program directors? Who are those next big personalities? And how do stations kind of not get caught up in this idea of, like, well, I can hire this one person and they can voice track 47 stations, and I'm just going to give them $3.13 more. Like, I think that conversation is so real right now. Down from the business. So,
well, Radio One just pretty much cleaned house, and if you go and see what they have there, it's all young DJs and all that. So, which to me is kind of, I don't know. I mean, doing what we do and how long we've done it for, there is some. You need the dinosaurs sometimes, because they know the history and they know the stories, and just because you're older doesn't mean you don't know the songs. I think it'd be a good idea just kind of to mix up, but not just clean house like they did, and just get young kids to come in. Because if we're gonna let our society or our music world based on TikTok, we got another thing coming down the road.
And to me, it's interesting that they're playing the nostalgia game of, like, just having people of a certain age looking back all the time and embracing that, or it's easy, or the opposite, which is playing the young game, right? Of, like, you just, you know, have what's next and just young people. Those are both easy things to do in a way. To me, the key is speaking to what Jason just said of how do you bridge those generations? How do you create a station that can talk about what's coming up, what's from the past, and how do you make that connection between those two? That's the real challenge. How do you stay relevant, making a connection of the new and the past, instead of just being nostalgic or just focusing on the now?
I feel like
my friend, I was going to say, my friend is Annie Nightingale, and she's on BBC Radio 1. She's 81 years old. Been on the air for over 50 years, and probably the longest DJ in history, right? And still knows music better than a lot of these kids do. So it's important to know that just because we may be older does not mean we don't know the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, BBC is kind of an exception because they're a public company or what, you know, and whatnot. But, you know, I think in the commercial radio landscape, I feel like the ship has sailed, you know, in terms of, you know, the part-time jocks and the overnights and the weekends. And it's a shame. It really is a shame. We've lost, you know, that farm team for developing talent. I think that in terms of new people trying to get into radio, it's probably on the non-com side, the low power FM side, the internet side. That's where we're seeing lots of just kind of interesting things pop up, and people just doing it, right? Because they can, because the barriers are lower. But yeah, I think the state of commercial radio is not great, right? For entry level on-air jocks, because they will just voice track it, unfortunately. And even if they are hiring you, you can't make a living wage doing it half the time. You're getting paid, minimum wage a lot of the times or whatever, right? So you got to go into it for passion, right? But there was a question in there about how do we pitch music? How has pitching music evolved during COVID, and what might it look post work from home? Yeah, I mean, listen, it's you're having to reach people via email more than on the phone because they're not in their office. If you've got a really good relationship with them, maybe you have their cell phone, but you don't really want to impose on the cell phone because they may literally be juggling their kids at the same time or homeschooling or whatever. So it's been a challenging year on that front. Obviously, you're not visiting stations and shaking hands and kissing babies like you normally would. The on-air, the visits, artists visiting stations obviously has not happened. We're definitely doing a lot more Instagram and Facebook takeovers with artists and with station sites. Yeah, I mean,
I think for us, I mean, hip hop is such a different vein and R&B such a different vein. I think what we get submitted to us, like my number one thing is, did you submit a clean MP3 or WAV file? Because 97% of the time it's not clean. Right. The other part is paying attention to how each individual station you are pitching wants to receive your music. Because even though this is post work from home, all of that is just geography, right? There's still a protocol that's in place that hasn't changed. Like, we are very specific about how you submit to us. And when I get link trees and YouTubes and all the rest of that stuff, that's not how we ask to receive the music. You should be looking at this like a job application. Each job requires a different preparation. Each job requires a different cover letter, a different resume, so that your best skill sets are brought forward. We're playing independent music, especially on my station on a regular basis. But what we're seeing is that, oh, well, we're going to be kind of lazy and we're going to kind of lay back and we're just going to do a blanket send. I got yodel music last week, somebody who was a yodeler. I've gotten country. I've gotten, I don't even know, like weird projects that aren't even format specific. And we really need to pay attention to how you submit your music. That's, I'm sorry, yeah. I'm saying this as a person who has dealt with independent music my entire career.
And something very important with that, because I also manage as well, but you need aesthetic. As a musician, you're also an artist. And if you're going to send something that just looks silly and goofy, it's not going to get looked at. Everything you do has to have a good aesthetic to it. And it's very important that, especially with radio, everybody's still looking. If your pictures are whack, music is probably going to be whack, unfortunately. But if you have good imaging, you have a good setup, and today it's virtually free to do all this stuff. Set your Instagram up right, set up everything right that you send out to people. If you're sending music to Nikki, put out a really cool picture, whatever it is, something that you need aesthetic that makes me want to look at you.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? That
the old DJs used to follow artwork on album covers. You get
it's still relevant. It's literally
absolutely
relevant. But you wouldn't think it would be. A lot of artists, I don't think that album artwork is important anymore. But when you're sending the digital file, you're also sending the artwork, and people make a judgment in 2 seconds. I'm
on the receiving end. I get so many promos. And probably, Nikki, you can identify with this. You have to judge things so quickly that you're going to hold on to anything. You're going to judge every book by its cover, by the name, anything that gives me an indication so I can just move through all the things, because you do want to
the first minute, but the first minute of the song. You're
holding on to anything just to make your judgment quicker. And you do get good at it. But yeah, those things go a long way.
The clean edits is really a thing too, because people don't think clean anymore because of online and Spotify and whatnot. But I mean, I got an email this week, it was like, this is the perfect record for radio. We want to hire you. We're ready to hire you. And I look at the song before I even play it, and I notice the song, the first word in the name of the song is the F-bomb. It's like,
But you know what's really
And how
funny
do I
about that?
work this? And where am I supposed to put this? Like, it's the same thing. Like the first minute of what we get, like I listen to it and I love it when they send the file that says clean edit, and then you play it and it's like the S word and then followed by the N word, followed by F. And I was like, so what part of clean is there? But I think you guys, we have to wrap up. I think this is our time.
So
I
this is
always
a
love
great
being on this panel.
conversation.